What's that one story you've always wanted to tell on r/AskReddit, but no one has ever asked the right question? A friend from grad school had previously been a skydiving instructor in Colorado, and had jumped more than 600 times. One of these times, he, for some reason, had his wallet in his suit, and it fell out. Fell to earth somewhere. He figured this sucks, but oh well. Absolutely no chance of finding it. Separately, a man in rural Colorado was found murdered. Turns out in their remote cabin where he lived with his daughter, he had been sexually abusing her and she finally had enough and killed him. The police searched the house and all of his property, and found my friend's wallet in the trunk of his car. Police thought to themselves, duck, an idiot murderer left his wallet in this dude's trunk, damn, easiest arrest ever. Friend had the super believable alibi of couldn't have been me, officer, actually that wallet fell out of my pants while I was skydiving. I was once robbed at gunpoint in a public bus. Dude was talking to me like he was my friend while pointing the gun at me. He only asked me for the cash I had in my wallet, and after I gave it to him he kept talking to me like we were random commuters having a conversation. Dude got more confident and asked for my phone. I said no, not the phone, man, I need it, and he was like, fine, it's okay, don't worry, we chill. 10/10 would be assaulted by him again. My first and worst online date, the drunk and the baby. It's 2008, I'm 18 and I meet a girl on OkCupid. She's older than me, 25, educated and a bit alternative. We agree to meet at a London pub for lunch at 1 in the afternoon, which is quite a journey for me, but I make it anyway. So, she turns up a bit late with a baby in a baby carriage. I had no idea she had a kid before this, but I didn't have a problem with it. She doesn't address that I didn't know about her kid, but says she couldn't find babysitting. Cool. No problem. We both go up and order a drink separately and hang out and chat. We've been there for about 2 hours and she's gone up to the bar a whole bunch of times, mostly coming back with coffees and the occasional Coca-Cola. But then, quite suddenly, she falls forward onto the table and catches herself with her elbows and takes a big sigh and says, "Oh man. I didn't mean to get so drunk." What? I tell her I didn't realize that she's even been drinking, but she tells me that she's been having Irish coffees, rum and cokes as well as shots at the bar. So at this point I start looking for an out, but she's becoming more and more despondent and her 1-year-old is sat in his pram, so I can't leave in good conscience. I start encouraging her to get a taxi home and she starts to cry, apologizing and saying that I must hate her. But shortly after she closes her eyes and will only respond in mumbles and groans. I try and get her to come around enough to get an SS out of her, which I can't, so I take her phone, which wasn't passworded. 2008 non-smartphones, most people didn't password their phone back then. Find a contact called Mom and call it. I was hoping she could come and pick her up, but it turns out Mom lives in the south of Spain. She isn't one bit happy to hear from me after I explain what happened, but presenting myself as a friend. Nonetheless, she gives me an address to get her to. I ask the bar to call me a taxi, which they do, and one of the bar staff take pity on me and help me get the woman, the baby and the stroller into the cab. I was about to give the driver money for the trip and see them off, but I realized that was a bad idea because who knows what would happen? So I get in the taxi to go take her home holding a baby the entire way, which I've never done in my life at that point. Turns out the driver is a stand-up bloke and I explain what has happened and we have a laugh about it. When we get there he even assembles the pram for me as I take her and place her on her doorstep. I find her keys and get her door open, at which point some guy pops his head round the corner from the kitchen and asks, "Who the duck are you?" I tell him my name and that I'm a friend and ask who he is. He says he's her fianc. Uh-oh. He's pretty angry that I've gotten his fianc with his child drunk in the middle of the day. After getting the pram through the door he begins to carry her up the stairs and he says to me, "You stay GHT there. You and I need to have a little chat." Nope. As soon as he turns the corner at the top of the stairs I turn and make a run for it, jump back in the taxi who I asked to take me to the nearest tube station. Afterward I needed some catharsis, so texted some friends who were locals and went out proper. And the kicker? On the train home that night I get a text message from her. "Had a lovely time. Can't wait to see you again." I block her number and never hear from her again. TLDR, went on date turns up with child and gets drunk without my knowledge. I drag her back to hers to make sure she's safe, only to find she also has a fianc who is less than pleased to see me. Okay. So I was never a sporty kid in school. I come from the country parts of Ireland, where everyone has thick accents, drinks Guinness, and most importantly, everyone loves football. Of course, I was an antisocial duck who never went outside, so I never learned how to play nor wanted to. So one day in primary school, the teachers made us all play football. Since I didn't know how to play, I decided to just stand awkwardly near the goal and admire the scenery for the whole game. At one point I became so absorbed in doing absolutely nothing that I pretty much blocked out the sound of everyone else's voices, so I had no idea how the game was going. Towards the end of the game, I was getting rather tired, and was basically half asleep, when suddenly this sticking incredible pain hits my back. I fall over and I literally have no idea what just happened, when suddenly some of the kids on my team went over to me and started cheering and saying, "Yeah, Egg, good job." I just kinda stood there for a moment before realizing what had just happened. Apparently I had just accidentally blocked the opposition's winning goal by just standing there and doing absolutely nothing. TLDR, if you want to accomplish your dreams and be praised, all you have to do is absolutely nothing. My husband, then boyfriend, and I were driving to his place. He had one of those cars where the front seat had one combined long seat up front. I had moved over to sit right next to him and he had his arm wrapped around me. At one point, I glanced over to my right and there was a van full of clowns. They were miming making out at us. Like 3 clowns in their front seat. They pulled away laughing. I like to walk quickly. But one day I encountered somebody ahead of me whose walking pace matched mine, possibly even beat it. So I went faster. I strained my ankles, my arms began to swing wildly. But I did it. I eventually overtook her. To assert my walking speed dominance in the most futile way possible, I didn't duck or avoid any of the low-hanging branches that were ahead of me. I plowed straight through them face first, without flinching. I kept my uncomfortably fast swinging arm walk run up until I was sure I was out of sight again. Nobody beats my walking pace. Nobody. Got electrocuted my first day of high school. I was in a jazz band class that met before first period. Awkward teenage me new to high school and not great at bass guitar. Electric guitarist asks me to hold his guitar while he grabs some sheet music. I hold my bass in my left hand while grabbing his guitar with my right. The building we were playing in was built sometime in the 60s, and I guess it had some sort of faulty wiring. The next few things happened probably within 2 or 3 seconds. I instantly felt a weird sensation through my arms and chest, and my arms were visibly shaking. I remember trying to let go of the guitars right away, but my hands only gripped harder. Electrical stimulation caused all my arm muscles to contract at once. I remember hearing loud feedback from both amps, and when I let out a sort of yelp it sounded like a loud, distorted version of my voice coming from the amps. Everyone else just heard the feedback. I passed out, briefly saw some popping blue lights, and woke up on the floor with blood all over my face and in my ear. Apparently what everyone else saw was me vibrate and faint into my amp and onto the floor. My band director, late 50s, apparently moved like lightning to unplug the amp and probably saved my life. When I woke up I noticed the blood in my ear first and my first thought was that I had some sort of inner ear damage. It turned out I just smacked my face on the knobs of the amp on my way down. I tried to sit up, but my teacher told me to stay still until the ambulance arrived. Then I noticed all my classmates and sister, same class, looking pale and staring at me. The nurse came in and let me sit in a chair. I was holding a towel to my face when my mom burst into the room. Apparently my sister had called her and her mom instincts took over. She U-turned back toward the school, drove across some part of a lawn, and made it there before the ambulance. She insisted on driving me to the hospital where I got some face stitches and did some tests, but otherwise ended up fine. Really the worst part about the experience was not getting any superpowers. The whole band wrote a get well card full of puns about being shocked to hear the story. Also, both guitars were miraculously undamaged. Edit, spelling, forgot some details. I accidentally stole a car. I had just gotten off work. I was working 2 jobs at the time and I got barely any sleep. I walked out and got into my car, started it up, and started driving home. I didn't realize something was wrong until I couldn't find my aux cord, and then I started realizing that there were things in the car that were not mine. Like the child seat in the back. I was an 18-year-old with no kids. I flip a U-turn and bust ass back to work to hopefully get the car back before its owner notices it's gone. I didn't. Cops were there and I was very quickly arrested. Owner dropped charges only after 3 things were done. 1. I showed my keys unlocked and started her car. Then pointed to my car, which was the same model, color, and year. 2. One of my coworkers vouched for the fact that the customer parked in the spot I almost always parked in. 3. Camera footage was pulled for the past 9 days I had worked, showing that 7 of those days I parked in that spot and the other 2 I parked close to it. Edit, you all. The cops were doing their job and were polite about it because I cooperated. And the owner was right to be angry. I was a punk-ass kid who in her eyes had just stolen her car. Or at least took it out for a joyride. The owner was a single mother and wasting any of her gas could have meant bad things. Please stop saying they were assholes. Once, when I was 8 years old, I was running through the forest. Suddenly I got pulled back by something. I didn't know what, but it didn't hurt. I called for my dad. When he came, he gasped and said that I shouldn't move. He then proceeded to remove a fishing hook that was in my skin right next to my eye. 1 more millimeter to the left and I would've been blind with one eye for the rest of my life. Edit, spelling. Sounds like you guys almost stumbled upon a pot farm. A lot of guerrilla growers set up fishing hook traps. I once got beer using a McLovin ID from the movie Superbad. I was 20, from US, so still underage. I was on a business trip and was waiting for my flight when I decided to get dinner at one of the airport restaurants. The waitress asks me what I'll have to drink and I ask what's on tap because why the duck not? I order a Corona, but she asks for my ID. So I hand her my McLovin ID. Best $4 I've ever spent. She looks at it, smiles, and says okay, and comes back with my beer. The cherry on top was when she came back a couple minutes later with another beer and gave it to me for free, saying she had accidentally poured an extra. That was the best moment of my otherwise uneventful and vanilla life. Fogel forever. 6th grade, I had hit a major growth spurt, so most of my clothes didn't fit and my family couldn't afford new ones. Once winter came around, the only jacket I had that I could still fit in even a bit was much too thin to be of any use. My teacher noticed and I walked into class one morning to see a big, fluffy winter coat on the back of my chair and a chicken soup for the soul book on my desk. Her kindness still makes my eyes water, even almost 2 decades later. Miss Robertson, if you're reading this, thank you. I never forgot. Edit, I really never thought I'd say this, but RIP inbox. I posted this late to the thread and thought it would get buried, didn't think I'd get more than 20 updates and especially not gold. To answer some common questions, this was in the Phoenix, Arizona area, and I've tried to get in touch with her since, but I don't remember her first name and she doesn't work at the school anymore. My first reaction was to hesitate. I thought maybe someone had come in early to do homework or be tutored or something and left their stuff, but she saw my hesitation and ushered me over to my seat. I've gotten more than a few comments about how it's an amazing thing that she did so, especially on a teacher's salary, and I agree. It wasn't an inexpensive coat, and I wore that thing until I literally couldn't anymore. My cat went missing one October. We back up to a large farm with tobacco and cornfields, and I suspected he was out there. He was, so I would go out onto the farm late at night to see if he would come to me when it was quiet and peaceful. He would not. I had to catch that jerk in a have-a-heart trap after 15 days. I'm out there one night because the moon is full and visibility is better than usual, although it's still a cornfield at midnight, so pretty dark. I was pretty close to one edge of the cornfield, with my back to the fence separating it from the next farm over. It was eerie being out there. If you were still, you could hear 1,000 mice scuttling around in the corn, all around you. And the weird creaking sound corn makes, and the rustling of the leaves, and that's all. Except then I heard a footstep behind me. I paused. I didn't hear anything. I was so sure it had been a footstep. I walked forward. There it was again, 20, 30 feet behind me. One soft, but distinct, footfall. I was unarmed, a girl, alone in a cornfield, being followed. It was pretty much the dumbest I've ever felt. I was like, wow, I'm about to be murdered while looking for my stupid cat, and then I clutched my flashlight close, took a deep breath, and turned around suddenly. There were about 15 horses standing there, just on the other side of the fence, staring at me. When I turned the flashlight on them, they scattered like cockroaches and thundered back to their barn. I guess the Y had noticed me creeping through the field next door, and they all crept over to see what I was up to, in near total silence. I swear, all I heard out of all those horses before they galloped away was 2 small footsteps. When I was a 5-year-old child, I liked to spend a lot of time in my parents' room, and one particular morning, I had found a cool little elephant mask. Naturally, I decided to play with it and put it on my face to show my mom. The horrified look on her face is what makes me remember this. However, she did laugh a little after she immediately took the mask off my face. TLDR, 5 years/me found my dad's elephant thong in my parents' room and put it on my face. I never knew what it was until I was 13. I live in a small rural town. When I was 7, my parents let my older sister and I ride our bikes about 3.5 miles into town to get lunch at the only restaurant in town, which my mom's cousin owns. I didn't realize how long of a ride 3.5 miles was and was hot and tired and crabby and burned my tongue on my burger, so I threw a fit and refused to ride my bike home. A stranger overheard my sister and I arguing about this and offered me a ride home. He said he could just put my bike in the back of his truck and everything would be fine. My sister agreed because she didn't want to have to call my parents to come pick us up and she was tired of my whining, and also she was 10 years old and dumb. I realized on the drive home that I hadn't given the man directions or told him my name, but he somehow knew my name and where I lived. He dropped me off at home, helped me put my bike in the garage, and then drove down the road to go visit my grandparents. It turns out, the man was my grandpa's brother, one of 12 siblings. He recognized me because I looked just like my mom did at that age. Thanks for listening to another episode of Reddit X. Subscribe and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any stories. Feel free to share your own stories below in the comments. Have a good day.